what's your opinion? I'm always interested to know when people have been to film school, where they sit now. Do you think it's a good idea, a good avenue, or do you think nowadays people don't really need to go to film school? What are your thoughts? G'day everyone. Here we are, Brad Houston with Filmmakers, episode number 7. So we're here with Hayley MacFarlane, and she is an Aussie director, filmmaker, storyteller. She's got a pretty exciting story to tell, or exciting from my perspective. She's a local Queenslander. She, I guess, had some good success with some short films early on in the piece, and then quite an extensive career in the reality TV space and with commercials as well, in the production company Two Little Indians. So she has worked on series such as Love Island, UK and Australia, I believe. I'm a Celebrity, Get Me Out of Here, which is hugely popular and very popular here in my house. So I'm excited to talk a bit about that. And then most recently, her debut feature film, Swimming for Gold, which is in cinemas at the moment. So that's really exciting. And I believe also they've just had a TV series, Dive Club, which is now, I believe, going to be featuring on Netflix in the coming year or so. So very exciting times. So I'm keen to talk to her about what it's all been like, and I guess transitioning from doing short film and reality TV to then shooting her first feature and what that experience was like. So we will talk with her in just a moment. Hey, Hayley, how are you?
Hi, good, thanks, Karen. How are you?
Yeah, good. I've just noticed that your fluffy kind of plant feature there in the background kind of matches the pink colours. So nice and colour coordinated.
I'm trying to get rid of that, actually. It's
Are you?
on its way out the door.
What is it?
It's just pampas grass, but it's quite ugly, actually. So I'm done with it.
You've had your time with that. Fair enough. So look, hopefully I got that introduction relatively accurate. And correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that you've essentially been in the business now for pretty much going on 8 years. Is that correct? You sort of started in 2012?
Yeah, that's about right.
Yeah. Okay. And you went through the traditional route doing film school before, getting started doing short films and what have you?
Yeah, exactly. So I grew up in Cairns, and then I moved to Brisbane to go to film school, and I went to Griffith Film School for 3 years, and then went straight into the industry.
Yeah, nice. So now that you've been, I guess, in the industry for quite a while and have achieved quite a bit, what's your opinion? I'm always interested to know when people have been to film school, where they sit now. Do you think it's a good idea, a good avenue, or do you think nowadays people don't really need to go to film school? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think that's a really great question, and I think it depends on what you want to do. As you know, as a director, I think it's really useful, because basically I'm able to go and I shot some films, I shot some music videos. It meant that I was able to leave film school with a show reel. But for people that want to do different things, like if you want to be a grip or a gaffer or something like that, I think if you can get work in the industry, then you're probably better off doing that than paying the uni fees that we all forget we have to actually pay back. So I think it does depend on what role you want to go down, and if you have the opportunity to start working in the industry.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I do. I really like the idea of, I guess, coming through, having a bit of a slate of sorts, and what I seem to get the feedback from people, and I guess tuning to podcasts and other things like that from here and overseas, is probably the connections and the friendships, and so you've got other like-minded people that you can potentially lure into helping you make your make your dreams come true. And did you always think that directing was the path that you wanted to go down? What was your thought there?
Yeah, to be honest, I didn't really know when I started at film school. I did the first year sort of feeling out what all the roles were. I was really fresh. I didn't really know. But I think my personality, I kind of like to be the one calling the shots. I don't like to be told what to do. So very quickly, I kind of gravitated towards directing for that reason.
Yeah, yeah. I think it's interesting. I think it's almost an exercise in self-awareness, right? To try and figure out, are you going to be someone who's happy? I guess having somebody else essentially telling you what to do, or do you want to be the one that's ultimately in charge? Yeah. So, I mean, in the beginning, what was the very first role that you had
At film school,
out of film school? So,
yeah.
what was your first kind of commercial
Um,
role?
yeah, so when I was probably second and third year, I started working um, in the industry and just as a runner, just as
Mhm.
an absolute shit kicker, earning no money, doing jobs for free, just loving to be on set and meeting crew and getting that experience. So
Yeah,
I definitely did my time.
yeah, yeah. And I think, and so um, I think with another plus in my perspective, as someone who's tried to have a crack at getting in, late in my or later in my career, is when you're younger, you maybe have like a little bit more ability to do that sort of thing, right? You might not have all of the overheads that you kind of amass by the time that you're kind of hitting your middle age years.
Yeah.
Yeah. So okay, from there, what was I guess the first big break for you? What was the first role that you had that you kind of thought, okay, this is getting exciting. I kind of really feel like I'm heading in the right direction now.
Yeah. So I stayed in Brisbane for about a year after film school. And then my partner and I moved to London. And it took me a while to get work. I probably didn't have work for 3 or 4 months there. And I was like, shit, what am I doing? Is this the right place for me? I really don't want to end up working in a bar. Um, and it was sort of right when push came to shove about having to make a decision how I was going to earn money over there. I went for an interview for Big Brother UK as a director, and I managed to get the job. So that was sort of my first, like, right, I'm directing, I'm in the industry, sort of the first door that opened for me.
Nice. Yeah, Big Brother. And then, and I guess that probably, was a large part of what set you up for those follow-on roles in that reality space. Is that kind of essentially how it happened? You sort of flowed from one thing into the next, into say Love Island, or was that Survival of the Fittest that was next?
Yeah, so I guess it's always trying to get that first door opened, you know. So getting that job as a director on Big Brother UK really opened doors for me, and I didn't necessarily go, "Oh, I want to be a reality director," um, but it was definitely something that excited me. So once I was sort of that door was open and I was kind of in it, the jobs just sort of kept coming then, and I was able to sort of do reality show after reality show. Yeah, it's been a lot of fun.
Yeah, and were you in producer roles, or what kind of roles? I know that you were directed many series, but in the beginning stage, what kind of position were you in there?
Yeah, so I was lucky to pretty much go straight into directing.
Oh, awesome.
Um, I will say I did Big Brother Australia before I moved to London, so I understood the format. I'd watched what the directors do because I was in the same room as them, and I think that did then set me up and allowed me to have a good interview to then get the job because I understood the show and the ins and outs of it and what the director actually did.
Mm, yeah. So, what would you say was the core, capability or thing that they were looking for in someone to take on that sort of role? And has it changed to today for other people who I guess may be wanting to perhaps head in that direction?
I think with reality, we're basically like in a control room where it's really high intensity. There's producers on a back row sort of yelling at you, and if we miss something, you miss it. Like there's no going back. So it's quite a high intensity role. So I
Mm.
think you have to have confidence. You have to be able to just get it done and not sort of panic. And sometimes directors do. It's kind of all too much, and they can't process it. And I would say that they're not necessarily the right directors for reality, because of that high intensity. So that's definitely something that series directors in reality always look for, and something that I think is really important for reality directors to have that confidence and be able to perform well under pressure.
Yeah, yeah, I could imagine. Sometimes or regularly, pretty much daily, I question my sanity for undertaking this live streaming carry on. I mean, it is a lot of fun. I do kind of like sort of, I guess, putting myself in situations where I kind of have to be on, I guess, and focused. But there's quite a lot of technical pitfalls. Like, I mean, I just bought this bloody $300 capture card that I thought was going to help to iron out some of the little gremlins I've got happening with the audio. And I just can't even get it working today. And I'm like, okay, well, that might be going back to JB Hi-Fi, or there's going to be some more time spent. But yeah, I totally get the whole concept of either getting something or not, versus having the opportunity to have multiple takes and that sort of thing. So Love Island. I mean, Love Island's a pretty it's kind of more steamy, more a bit more saucy, I suppose, than the other shows. How did you find that experience?
um, yeah, I mean, it is pretty focused, I guess, on people hooking up and all that sort of stuff, which I mean, sometimes, look, to be honest, we just kind of flick their mics off because you're listening to them for like 10 hours a day and they're just talking junk. So it's, it's got its moments. There's definitely like really exciting times, and there's when things kick off and you want to make sure you don't miss anything. And that's kind of like when you get the adrenaline rush and it's go, 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 and that's great. And then, there's a lot of times where they're just sunbaking by a pool and they're sleeping because they've been up all night, and it can be quite boring. So
Yeah.
it's got its ups and downs, I would say.
Yeah. Did you sort of feel like you're, like at an adult zoo, kind of watching the animals?
Yeah, well, it is, it's kind of like for us, it's sort of going back to those Big Brother days where it is actually an experiment. It's you're watching how people behave and why they behave the way they do, and the whole social experiment side of it is actually really interesting. And that's something, getting to watch some people for 10 hours a day, you do learn about that. And that's kind of a part of the job that I love. I do find that quite interesting to see how people get paranoid when they've got nothing else to worry about, and the sense of loneliness when they can't talk to their family, and just sort of all that stuff. And you sort of realize how similar we all are as human beings.
Yeah. Yeah, aside from the fact that I hate studying, I've often thought that psychology would be really interesting because I find people fascinating and the way that we all think. And, I observe some of my own behavior and decision making at times. And I'm at as much of a loss as anybody else to understand what the hell is going on.